Yeah, I'm going to start recording. Okay, so we are recording now. We are live now. If you have any question, please let me know. All right, so let's go. Let's go. Let's go. You will have to let me share my screen to host. All right, because I can't share my screen. It says you have disabled me from sharing my screen. So if you check your settings, you're going to see a setting for you to allow me to share my screen. So just do that immediately. You go through your settings, advanced settings usually. Okay, so it's done. No, it's still saying disabled sharing of screen. So please enable me to share my screen so I can run. So guys, what you need to know, today is Boo 303. I'm starting my recording. The idea is to welcome you into the banking and what it will look like as we go forward. I want to appreciate everyone that has been able to submit your assignments. So far, I can see from your assignment staff that over 100 and something of you have submitted. So I'm not talking about starting video. I mean, enable me to share my screen, or you can make me co-host so I can do that myself. So a number of you have submitted your assignments, and there are so many of you. So I'm unable to mark everyone's assignment yet, but I hope to read everything. But my God, there are so many of you. And sometimes I just keep taking it over and over, and I'm like, does this ever end? You know? So, yeah, the classwork tab, there are over 100 turned in, and just 7 people have not started this thing. So I'm going to share my screen. It's like we're unable to do that. So yeah, if you can see my screen, please raise your hand. Please indicate if you were the former host. Let me make you a host again so that I can focus on what you are. Wonder you're Marco. So yeah, I've made you the host now, Wonder. So please indicate that you can still see my screen. Okay, good. So let's go. Book 303, Law of Banking and Negotiable Instruments. Today's class is Nature, History, and Evolution of Banking in Nigeria. My name is Christian Sopruchi. Now, I see that some of you do not understand how to use the word Mr. My first name is Sopruchi, like that's literally my name, Sopruchi. So my surname is Christian. If you want to use Mr., you have to add it as a prefix to Christian, not Sopruchi. So you say things like Mr. Christian, or if you want to call me Sopruchi, then you could just call me Sopruchi, or some call me Sop or Uncle Sop, whatever. But in formal documents like uh, letters, assignments, things of that nature, just say Mr. Christian or use the full name Christian Sopruchi. There is no need to put Mr. or whatever after that. So I'm okay with my name. All right. Okay. Or you can add Mazi. Never forget the Mazi if you want to add something. Mazi Christian Sopruti. Perfect. Okay, moving on. In this course, this particular today that I am teaching you, I will be I'll be teaching you what is the nature of banking in Nigeria, the history, and where we are in banking in Nigeria. Okay, so first, banking is an industry that handles cash, credit, and other financial transactions. So you will realize that banks deal majorly in money. It is only somebody who is broke and uninformed that will say that money is not big business. I was watching a video where someone was trying to explain the fact that the printing of pennies in the UK, and sorry, in the US, pennies for the US was costing so much money that the government were being advised to stop it. Many countries have stopped printing pennies because the amount of money used in printing pennies were more than the pennies worth themselves. So it, dealing in money is serious business. Why? Because if I give you 100 million naira today, one of the things you worry about is how to keep it safe. Having 100 million means that you will have to get security to protect you, you know, or somebody, you have to keep it in a secure place, in a something that will not be stolen. Getting that security to protect that money, you need to pay them the guns they have to use, or if they have to use secure modes of transport to move the money. All these things are incidental costs to handling money. And those costs have to be built into the transaction. So for you to have a place where you keep money and you can come every time to call out that money requires that somebody should be taking care of that money. Somebody should be safeguarding that money. Somebody should be there whenever you want to take your money. So all of these things cost money. So that is the business that bankers do. Bankers deal on money. And money, as you know, is a unit of exchange. So banks are a safe place to store extra cash and credit. Now, what is the difference between cash and credit? Credit is an amount that you are eligible to have or you do not have. It's different from debit. That is when you have gone above an amount you are supposed to have. Let me explain this. If, for example, somebody has a bank account and he does a monthly lodgement, he lodges money, 200,000 naira every month into a savings account. Every month. That person who has not broken 3 or 4 years of lodging 200,000 is worth more than 200,000. If a bank were going to give that person money, like a loan, they are going to look at how much this person can comfortably take care of. So if that person comes for a loan of 1 million, it is easy to give him that loan based on the fact that he normally would deposit 200,000 every month. What the bank has to do is just create an avenue where he can pay the 2 million naira loan he wants over a course of, let's say, 4 or 24 months, 3 years, and they remove 20,000 from the 200,000 he deposits every month, and he will not know. His credit is worth up to 3 million naira, but the cash in his bank account every month may be just 200,000. So there's a difference between cash and credit. Now, banks offer savings accounts, current accounts. I should have inserted that. Certificates of deposit. Certificates of deposit is proof that you deposited money. Checking accounts. Checking accounts are accounts that you can use check on. Banks use deposit to make loans. So if somebody deposits a huge sum of money that he's not going to use for a long time, let's say you create a fixed deposit account for 4 or 5 years, you don't want this money until 5 years' time. Banks can use that money you've deposited to them to give a loan to a businessman, which loan can generate profit for the bank and you. Now, loans that banks give can be used for home mortgages, business loans, car loans, and everything of that nature. I see I repeated that. Now, home mortgages are loans that you can take for 30 years. In established economies, you can have a loan that will last you for 20 years. 20 years loan, 40 years loan. In economies like Nigeria, we don't give that amount of loan because people's means of income uh, is not certain. Also, the economic system is volatile. If you give somebody 20 million naira in Nigerian naira today, in the next 20 years, the value of that 20 million may be 5 million naira. Imagine you gave somebody 20 million naira in 2015. and the person is supposed to pay you over time across 20 years. By this time, that a dollar is exchanging almost 7 times what it used to exchange before. You gave somebody 20 million naira when a dollar was exchanging to 120 naira. Today, a dollar is exchanging to close to 500 naira. Your 20 million naira is almost worth 5 million now. So, volatile economies like Nigerian economy and economies that look like ours, developing country economies, do not support long mortgages. Short loans like car loans, business loans are usually what is given. And most loans don't get past 5 years, except if, for example, you're a very big businessman like Dangote and the rest of them. So bankers deal on cash, credit, and other financial transactions. It's important to know that it's not just cash that banks deal with. It's not just loans that banks deal with. They deal with everything that has to do with cash, credit, and other financial transactions. As you go further, you are going to realize that banks also deal with things like securitizations, um, bonds, and many other things that banks deal with. But at this level, just understand that banks handle cash, credit, and other financial transactions. Okay, now what are the four principal branches of the business of modern banking? According to Dr. Reformo's note, which I expect you to have read by now, banks exchange money, banks lend money, banks borrow money, and banks transmit money. Now, with due respect to my prof, this is quite an archaic way of viewing it. Banks do more than money-based transactions now. Banks do transactions that are based on debt. You know, banks do transactions that are based on, on, as I said, credit. Banks do transactions now that are based on cryptocurrency, you know. And these are things that are emerging and things that we must take note of as banking students. We must know these things. And I expect the group that will be presenting on Thursday from both cohorts to address me on them. How banking business has gone beyond just making of money, lending of money, borrowing of money, and transmitting of money to creation of credits, securitizations. Please note what is the meaning of securitizations, creation of bonds, and even Islamic banking, ethical based banking. Now, how did we come about banks today? Dr. Rifomo and Igwe Ike. I hope you guys know Igwe Ike. Okay. If you don't know Igwe Ike, I'm going to show you Igwe Ike right now. Let me show you Igwe Ike. This is Igwe Ike's textbook. Go and buy it. All right. Or I have this policy of buy, borrow, steal. If you buy it, it's yours. You can borrow from a senior colleague, or you can steal from someone who's already bought one. All right. So, but don't take the last advice. Don't say I did not warn you. Do not take the last advice, but by all means, buy this book, borrow it, or steal it. This book is very old, but it just introduces the basics in banking. Do not trust everything you see in this book, especially for purposes of knowing what is currently in use in banking. If you open the book, you are going to see first published 1991. That is 30 years ago. It's old. Case closed. So, how did banking start in Nigeria? Banking, not in Nigeria rather. Banks started from the word bench or banco in the marketplaces of medieval Italy. So, if a person's bank fails, his bench was broken. Now, some of you who read the Bible, those who are Christian and go to church, because some of you are Christian and you're just bad people that don't go to church. Some of you that go to church realize that the Bible talks about when Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers. That is part of what banking used to be. There used to be a bench, right? And people will place gold coins on it, silver coins on it, the coins that were used in each country, right? So these coins were exchanged value for value. It was that in the places like the temple, like the Hebrew temple or temples in Greece or Rome, people will keep benches in the front where you can exchange your money so that you can use it for offering inside the temple, or you can use it for your business transactions. And the way the Bible talks about it and the way the history of this went on is that it came to a point where these things became very busy and the front of temples became real business places. And that is why Jesus had to overturn them, because they became very noisy that even doing business within the temple was very distracted. So when a person who is a banker, somebody who has a bench, and gold coins were placed on his bench, when he has failed, when his money had finished, or when he is unable to exchange money, that person's banks were broke. That person's bench was broken. And if you read Dr. Reform and Igweke, they talked about the fact that originally the bankers or the bankers now received gold in bullions. Bullions mean the raw gold that had not been processed, the way it was in raw gold form. They will collect it, they will exchange it for coins. Then they will break down that raw gold to also coins, pieces of coins that they can hand over to people. They will use it to form other money, coins that other people can use. So each civilization or country had its own coin. For example, for those who also know the Bible, when Jesus took the coin, when they asked him a question, he said, "Whose face is on this coin?" And they say, "Caesar." That is why Jesus could say, "Render to Caesar that which is Caesar's." That is Caesar's coin. If you take that coin to the Egypt of those days, you may not use it to buy anything. So merchants, who were people who dealt in money, when people want to travel from, let's say, Rome to Egypt, they will have to exchange coins with merchants. Merchants travel far and wide, so they usually have different coins for different places they go to, right? So it's easy, and it's easier for a merchant to exchange his money for you because that is his business. Okay, now from all of those business, banking firms or companies were later to emerge, usually a group of associates or families who used agents to carry out their transactions. Okay, Italian banking houses developed from this, from developing bills of exchange for settling payments. Now, what this meant is that in the Italian banking houses, if you bring your gold to them, they will write you a bill of exchange telling you that we certify that this person has so amount of gold with us. You've deposited, let's say, 50 kg of gold. They write that person a check in, in quotes, or an undertaking, which is literally what a bill of exchange was, that we undertake that this person has this amount of money with us. That exchange, that undertaking the person has in paper form, can be used to settle other transactions. So that person walks into a market with only the paper that he was given. Olujobi Oluwole, please stop writing on my screen. Thank you. Now, that paper that that person takes, he can carry it into a market and use it to buy something. That was the origin of paper money. That is why they say money was usually denominated in gold. So they say this is a denomination. It shows how much of your gold or silver were with merchants. So if you exchange that your note with somebody else's goods, right? That person will give you good, take your note, and take that note to a banker who has made the bill of exchange and carry the gold that you have. Realize that in the olden days, people used to exchange things with barter. If you have goat, you give to somebody who has yam. So 50 yams go for one goat or something like that. However, instead of doing barter trade, which were really difficult because you may carry goods to market that nobody wanted to buy. Instead of doing that, you can just take a note from your banker that you have a specific amount of money with them and use it to exchange for goods and services. Now, what happens there is that once you make that exchange, the person you've given that paper to can use it to buy other things and buy other things and buy other things. That is how money developed. Although today money is backed by fiat. That is, government produces 5 naira and tells you that this is 5 naira. Okay, please, host, be on your guard so that you can unmute me in case anything happens. All right. Now, going forwards, um, I was talking about the origin of paper money, right? And I said now government um, backed transactions by fiat. So this is why at the moment printing of money can become so costly that is even more than the amount that the government is printing. We'll deal with that later when we discuss money. Um, Evolution of banking in Nigeria. Elder Dempster moved money from one part of the country to another to boost their shipping business, practically starting banking in the country. Who is Elder Dempster? Elder Dempster is a shipping company that was used to move goods from here to the UK, the United Kingdom. In those days, they came here, they took sugar, plantations, they took granules, they took many things which belonged to our people. Elder Dempster was a shipping business that ran from the 1800s and lately went bankrupt in the 2000s. So they were big money business that shipped goods from one part of the country to the other. As they were shipping goods from one country to the other, they were carrying money from one part of the country to the other. So that action of taking money from one part of the country to get to the other started banking in Nigeria. And that was even better solidified when they established a branch of a South African bank called the African Banking Corporation in 1892. This bank later became the British Bank of West Africa on 31st March 1893 and started operation the next year. In 1899, the Anglo African Bank merged with the British Bank of West Africa, and in 2012, they began operations. Today, that bank is known as the First Bank of Nigeria. Now, David Adekeye, please stop writing on my screen. Thank you. Now, um, the Colonial Bank was set up in 1917, later taken over in 1925 by Barclays Bank BCO. This Barclays Bank of that 1917 is today known as Union Bank of Nigeria. In 1949, the British and French Bank of 1949 was set up, now known as the United Bank for Africa. In 1933, the first indigenous bank that stood, stood the test of time, the National Bank of Nigeria, was established. Was later nationalized by the Western state government and its name changed to Wema Bank Limited. Now, this shows you that the beginning of banking business in Nigeria was majorly a colonial affair. Banks just handled accounts for colonial officers, British, and other white people. Um, Banks did not serve Africans, and this is why our country, Nigeria, through the process of nationalization, wanted to become a part of the financial system. And this they tried to do by nationalizing some of the shares. You are going to see as we go on that action of nationalizing banks in Nigeria largely destroyed the banking sector until government was removed from banking business. Also, the fact that these banks have stood the test of time show you that this issue of what do you call it, generational causes doesn't work. Because if generational causes were to work, these companies built on the back of slave trade, the destruction of our nation, our exploitation as a people, should not be existing today. But these banks are still existing. The companies in the UK, the children of the owners of these banks are still very rich today, you know? And this also means that for you that is listening to me, one day you can own your own bank. And who knows, the first time you may have experience with banking or the first time you might have come in contact with banking, maybe in your third year. So if you have a dream of opening a bank, please go for it. Failed commercial banks. Now, many of these failed banks, right, were um, indigenous banks, banks opened by Nigerians. You are going to see a lot of them here, including the Muslim Bank, the Bank of America, which later became Savannah Bank, the Bank of India, which became Nigeria Arab Bank, and all that. You are going to see a lot of these banks failed. You know, some of them that failed were in commercial banks. Some of them that failed were merchant banks. Okay, so many of them. There are so many of them in the list in Dr. Rifomu's work and in this Igweke. So why did these banks fail? You are going to find the reason. If you want to find the full list of every failed financial institution in Nigeria, just click on this link. I'm going to supply you this slide, right? I'll put it up in the announcement page. You can check it out later. So if you want a full list of all failed financial institutions in Nigeria, please click on that link. Now, why did the banks fail? One is they didn't have enough capital. They were managed poorly. They kept records poorly. You haven't started. You are busy creating more and more branches. You know, you are illiquidity. They don't have enough cash. Many of the banks were mismanaged, so to speak. You know, somebody will say something like the Nigerian factor, you know, and many of these things could not stop because at the time there was no banking regulation. I mentioned that in my number 8 there. There was no banking regulation that specified how bankers should behave. And the last was there was fierce competition from expatriate banks. All the banks that I've mentioned here, right? These banks, they all had, all of these banks, they all had money from outside the country. They all had money from established companies in the UK. They had been doing business in Nigeria for years. Some of them were built on the back of the slave trade. Some of them were doing things, Competing with them would be very difficult. So fierce competition from them really led to the destruction of banking business from indigenous people. Indigenous Nigerians, and Nigerians, we would always mismanage things. When you give somebody a whole lot of money belonging to several people, next thing he wants to use that money and give his girlfriend. Some of you are doing that today. You collect money from your parents and you put your girlfriend on salary of 20K a month. the same person that you are in the same class with, you cannot be a good banker. If you are somebody like that, don't return to my class. Disappear, because you don't have the brains to do banking business. You are going to be like these people that failed banks in Nigeria. So, banking in Nigeria today, what is the demarcation between merchant and now? One thing you must know that originally banking licenses, we are going to talk about this, so don't feel overwhelmed. You are going to know all of this. It's just one step at a time. Today is an introductory class, so many of the things I'm going to be talking about will dovetail into other topics, but we're going to deal with those topics in full soon enough. Banking license in Nigeria is usually demarcated normally into um, merchant and commercial banks. A merchant bank is not a commercial bank. However, that is no longer the case because there is something called universal banking licenses. A merchant bank can serve also as a as a commercial bank now. There is no more demarcation. However, banks in Nigeria still maintain demarcations in the form of whether they are nationally authorized, regionally authorized, or internationally authorized. Banks that have regional authorization only operate within a state. For example, Citibank. Some of you don't know there is Citibank in Nigeria. That's because they operate in one state. National authorization are banks that have branches all over the country. International authorization are banks that operate outside the country. So if you are in London, if you're in the US, you can still use your GT Bank ATM card. But if you are using a bank that has only a regional authorization, you cannot use their banking business, you cannot use their banking licenses outside the country. So, yeah, that's what that means. So, names of banks in Nigeria. We are slowly coming to the end of this class. If you want a full list, please check out this link here. Okay, at the moment, there are 23 banks in Nigeria. CCT Bank, I told you, and it's a limited company. Limited companies mean it's a private company. It's not a public company. It may be two people that own it. That shows that somebody like you, like Oluwatayo, that is busy drawing lines on my presentation, and all of you that are drawing lines, please don't repeat this next time. You can own a bank in this country. Look at this person. Citibank Nigeria Limited is a private bank. Access Bank is a PLC. Many of these are PLCs, but there are a lot of them. See, SunTrust Limited is a limited private business, one person and his wife, So it's possible for you to own a bank in the country. Titan Trust Bank. I've never seen anybody with an account in Titan Trust Bank, but it's there. So yeah, you can open a bank account in Nigeria. There are a full list of banks in Nigeria, even microfinance banks. If you check out this link, they have the full names of banks in Nigeria. So you can, your presentation, tell us which of them is a regional bank, which of them is a national bank, which of them is a distance. So moving on, two major reforms that happened in the banking sector in the last 2 decades. One is the Soludo reforms and two is the Sanusi reforms. When Soludo came into the country as a this thing, as when Soludo came into the country as a CBN governor, he started immediately to begin deep reforms within the country. After Soludo became governor in 2004, in less than 1 year, over 100 banks in Nigeria came down to 25. We used to have over 100 banks, but he congealed them into 25. He said, first, their capital base was too shallow. He said, you must recapitalize. There is no bank in Nigeria that we should not have deposited in CBN at least 25 billion naira. That was supposed to serve as a windfall in case the bank went south. So if you deposit 25 billion with CBN, if you give loans that make you go bankrupt, they can from that money pay your depositors. Many people fought him on that. There are other things he did which really helped. I want those that are presenting on Thursday to critically address me on these reforms. All these other ones are story anybody can read up. But please address me critically on the Soludo and the Sanusi reforms. Sanusi came about addressing non-performing loans. So bankers used to give loans, and they'll give loans upon loans that were vacuous. Somebody that didn't have money, you are giving him loan before, you still give him another loan. So there were so many of those loans that they were reporting as profit, but they were not really profit because it was just a debt. You cannot report an amount of money that somebody is supposed to pay you as a profit of your business. Sanusi opened that up, and many of the bank MDs went to jail for the way they handled money. Popular among them is Cecilia Ibru, you know, Erastus Akimbola of Access Bank, right? Intercontinental Bank of those days. Yes, not Access, Intercontinental Bank, Erastus Akimbola. A lot of them went into prison. So address me critically on these reforms. They are salient points, but I'm going to give you some of the advantages, right? So what are some of the advantages of these reforms by these people? One of them, so those reforms increase bank capitalization. I talked about it already. That is the amount of money that banks deposited in CBN were increased from whatever amount to 25 billion. So in order to have a bank in Nigeria, you must at least have deposited in CBN 25 billion naira. Then it diluted the ownership of banks. Many banks were just family business. A man and his son and his wife, they'll be the owners of a bank. By the time you are forced to get 25 billion, so you have to partner with other banks, do mergers, do acquisitions, sometimes hostile takeovers. Many banks were swallowed by Access Bank, you know. And people used to think Access Bank was a small bank. Access Bank swallowed the Intercontinental Bank, that was in quote a very big bank, swallowed Diamond Bank now. As there is no Diamond Bank today. It's Access Bank. It's not Diamond Bank, it's Access Bank. Then Access Bank swallowed a lot of these banks. So if you had a business that you and your son were deciding who gets what loan, you will now have to incorporate other people into the decision-making body because you are no longer the majority shareholder. So that is what happened here. The ownership of banks were diluted. It reduced public sector deposits or government funds to a maximum 10% in banks. So Ludo also made sure that the authority of government in banks were reduced. And I want to tell you something. For those of you who will go into all of these sectors in the future, remove government from anything if you want it to move forward. Privatize anything that you want to move forward. Now, look at the sectors in Nigeria. If I ask you, let me even allow one or two of you to talk. Which sectors in Nigeria do you think is reputable internationally? If you have an answer to this, raise your hand. You'll be unmuted. You'll be asked to unmute yourself and you can talk. Which of you know any sector of Nigeria that is reputable internationally? Let me hear you. Let me know whether you people have dropped your phones in your parlor and you're watching movie, and you are pretending to be here. Let me know those who are with me and those who are against me. So if you know, somebody should tell me.
The entertainment sector, sir.
Yes, yes, the entertainment sector is a very reputable aspect of Nigeria, a sector in Nigeria that is internationally renowned. Because nowadays we have entertainers from Nigeria packing audiences in the UK and US. Internationally, go to Dubai, our music is like normal songs there. Do you notice that there is no government involved? Do you see there is no law regulating entertainment in Nigeria? Do you also notice that government does not allow you, you don't go and take license from government before you sing or something like that? What other sector in Nigeria? I see David Adeke raising.
The hospitality sector,
What is the hospitality sector, please? Like
hotels,
okay,
beaches, and
in hospitality sector that is still growing, but then you realize that government has a lot of hand in some of these places, that are, let's say government still owns land in Nigeria, and that is why hospitality sector has not really grown. There is still something known as Ministry of Tourism, where they are busy stealing money. If you scrap that Ministry of Tourism or you eliminate the influence of the Ministry of Tourism on hospitality, you're going to see how much it will grow. Let me listen to Adike. Adike, what do you have to tell me? David.
The arts sector,
Which art are you
just
talking
like
about?
the other part of entertainment. Arts, visual arts, basically, the paintings and the likes.
Okay, paintings and the likes, but our painting has not really gone international. Okay, but it's still growing. Let me listen to Yefun Yin, right? Okay. Yefun Yin, what do you have to
Okay,
say?
the agricultural sector.
Agricultural sector is also moving, but that sector is still heavily controlled by government. I do not agree with that. It's still heavily controlled. Government has too much overreach in that sector. I do not agree with that. But can I hear some? There is a sector that somebody should tell me. There is one that you people know. Okay, Emmanuel.
Maritime sector.
Maritime sector. No, no, no. That's not what I'm looking for. But our maritime sector is still, in fact, the reason why it's a mess is because of the government. Because the government has closed the border, the government has not allowed private individuals to develop ports. Okay, so that is also a bad one. Let's see, somebody else should tell me what sector in this country is really. There's one sector, just think about it. Something that Nigerians internationally are known for. We've been able to export it outside. We have some of the richest people in the country, in the world, in that sector. We have some of the richest people in the world in that sector. We have exported this particular sector to every part of the world. We have Michael, please tell me. Somebody say oil and gas sector. No, no, no. Oil and gas sector is the worst in the world. It's the very worst.
Maybe the technological sector.
Technology,
like
that is
innovations and
technology. Nigerian IT is breaking barriers now. That is very good, but we don't have the richest IT guys in the world in Nigeria. I mean, the people who practice this sector are in this country. So they are here. They've not taken their business outside the country. But from here, their business influences outside. Their business influence is seen outside. This Infinix X4 is like the person has something to say. Can you give the person an opportunity, please? Infinix X4, do you have anything to say?
No, sir.
Okay, you don't have anything to say. Please take your hands down. Okay, Michael Ajayi.
Religious.
Yes, religious sector. That is perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Religious sector.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The religious sector is the sector that we are killing it. Man, we are killing that sector, man. If you want the good side, that is the parts that we generate funds. We have the richest pastors in Nigeria, in the world. Top 10 richest men of God in the world are in Nigeria. Even if you look at extremism, currently we have the 4 deadliest terrorist groups in the world too. The 4 deadliest in this country, So we have both the good side, the bad sides, the everything in between, right? So we've been able to use religion and do a lot of business. And you see, government does not regulate it. Even the money that is made from religious places are not taxed. So I'm talking about it because of this reduction of public sector deposit or government funds to a maximum 10%, reducing government overreach in banks, stopped the failing. How many banks have failed in the last 20 years? Only Diamond Bank, and it was immediately subsumed by another bank. Before, what used to happen is that tomorrow you wake up, they will say your bank has crashed. If you had 10 million in that bank, it was gone. You will see, like when Savannah Bank crashed, you see people lining up in front of the bank crying. People who have saved money for years, people who have kept deposit in that bank for years. Usually when Nigerians start hearing that a bank is about to crash, they start lining up in front of that bank, do panic withdrawals. And that also exacerbates the situation and the bank crashes them. But so far, in the last 20 years, 2040 and now, within the last 2 decades, how many banks have crashed? You know, our banks are now more secure. The money you have is more secure because even if anything happens, many of these banks are insured by AMCON or NDIC, and it's easy to transfer people's deposits back to them. So nearly every bank is quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and the capital market in Nigeria is now deeper. So what are the benefits of Sanusi's? Please mute yourself, please. What are the benefits of Sanusi's, what he calls Alpha Initiative? He says he brought a new, look at the place, Sanusi delivered a speech in Warwick University. You see the speech here, that's where I got this from. So he says there is now transparency and public disclosure of transactions. Banks are lending to private sector with additional liquidity. Because during Sanusi's time, banks received an injection of 1.7 trillion. That is the period that banks were crashing all over the world. There was this global cash crunch, and economies all over the world were dying off. Banks were injected 1.7 trillion. So he said that is one of the benefits. But then is it really a benefit? The reforms have brought a new mindset to the industry. Banks are engaging in best practices. There is a Sahara Reporters article you will see for those presenting on Thursday that talks about Soludo's reforms. It really lambasts his reforms, I also want you to look at it as you criticize this, because when I say criticize, you look at the benefits and the disadvantages. So you know that your presentation is not going to be just coming here and reading something. You have to be serious with it, make sure it's worth it. Also, I've told your course rep and Nneka that everybody should have a specific contribution to the distance. Everybody should be able to speak. 6 minutes is enough for everybody to say what they want to say. And then you should have a slide, produce one slide for everybody. So when you finish talking, this other person takes over from this portion of the slide and all that. In the paper you are going to contribute your ideas together to produce. I need to see who wrote what as well, because I'm going to be grading it. It's going to be graded. Your presentation and your paper will be graded together. So if your paper is good, your presentation is whack, it is whack. If your presentation is whack and your paper is good, it's still whack. I'm going to check your presentation to also make sure you didn't dub things online. And when you submit through this Google Meet, it's possible for me to check for plagiarism inside. So you just know. Thus, I didn't warn you. So make sure your paper is well presented, well justified, like cleanly presented, title, the names of everybody that is presenting is on the top and everything. And I assure you, you'll make mistakes, but do not hesitate to ask me questions that you may have. Thank you very much. This is where we'll come to the end of today's class. Now, somebody asked a question about the state of online banks. Online banks, I do not know whether they applied for banking licenses. If it's an app that you are using that says it's an online bank, you have to be very, very careful. make sure that it has real properties that you can go and grab if you have to, in case there is a problem with the bank, so they don't disappear with your money. I have not really studied online banks, but I'm sure this would be of benefit to you. Okay, so credit, you can check it online. I explained credit as that the fact that somebody can still be able to get money that is more than what he normally deposits, that borrowing window that somebody can still pay back based on his transaction history with a particular financial institution. There are better definitions you can get online. Okay, I will let, in 5 minutes, anybody that has a question, you can raise your hand or send it in the chat. Please don't send it as a direct message to me. Send it as a public message that everybody can see and benefit from. So send the message in the chat or raise your hand and ask the question. Otherwise, I'm going to stop presenting right now. Any questions? You have 5 minutes. Okay, good. So since you all understood everything, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone who decided to join. As I said before, my presentations on Monday are not compulsory. You don't have to be here. If you're here, you are here on your own accord. So I want to thank you for coming. I hope to see you on Thursday through your cohort. Please do not join another people's cohort so that the group can be sizable like this. I like this, the way you guys are. This is how banking class should be. Just 27 people, So make sure you are there during your cohort presentation. Okay. As I told your class rep, Clinton, make sure that you present and you are there. The first cohort we have 6 to 7. The second cohort we have 7 to 8. Now, Dr. Rifomo says you should read the material he gave you. Send your questions through your course rep to him. So if you have read it and I've explained it now, if you have any questions, please send it through your course rep to Dr. Rifomo. He says if he sees a sizable number of questions, he can address them. So now you know that, use that information. Hebziba, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, yes, I wanted to ask you a question on I think the NDIC, doesn't it? This insurance for banks. Like oftentimes, I think when going through banking institutions, they have this NDIC that tell you of 500,000. Now, my question is, in case a bank actually crashes down or crashes down, now will people actually receive the exact like amount that there is that deposited in the bank, or it is up to the amount that has been insured? Like, I don't know if you understand the question.
I understand you. So you say if they insure a bank up to a particular amount of money, what of the amount over that limit? Now, what you will know is that a bank crashing is a complicated process. It's not like where they're selling crayfish and there's no more crayfish, So if bank insures a particular amount of money to a particular amount of money to a particular amount, what the agreement says is what the agreement says. However, I want to say that what has been the practice over time with what we see so far is that before a bank crashes, there is usually NDIC and AMCOM take over the assets of the bank and sell, including the debt and liability of that bank, to another bank that takes over the operations of that bank. Also realize that there is already a 25 billion capitalization with the CBN. So it's easy for some of these to be taken care of. Now, to specifically address whether each person will be paid all the amount, for example, somebody that has 700 billion or something like that, I'm sure before you put that amount of money in a bank, you should be able to have insured it yourself. So I will look into the question further to see if, for example, there are procedures for situations like that or not. But I want to assure you that usually everybody should get their money's worth back at the end of the day. So yeah, that's that. Thank you so much, everyone, for this class. I'm really grateful you are here. See you on Thursday. Bye-bye.